How the Dice Fell. Flint Daniels and the Trees of Knowledge. Part 8. They had just cleared out the nest of mine snakes that were breeding in the engine room and had run out and had just escaped the engine room. Because even though they had destroyed the breeding center, it like basically exploded, and then a million mine snakes were falling everywhere, and they had to run for their lives.
And just to remind everyone, this is a waterborne ship, not a spaceship.
Yes. It is a waterborne ship. Oh yes, and I should also remind if anyone's listening to this that this contains major spoilers for the books The Ice Limit and Beyond the Ice Limit, which are excellent books, and I highly recommend them. But yes.
So in the course of running from these mine snakes, we did that at the end of last adventure, so this is recap. Anne Pillay just ran pell-mell. She was getting mine snakes on her, and she wasn't making any effort to bat them off. She was just running as fast as she could. So yeah, she's obviously infected. Everyone's like, yeah, okay. She basically was licking the eyeballs of the mine snakes.
Don't lick ice snake.
Yeah. Everyone was definitely suspicious of Anne Pillay. And now I think basically what happened next was everyone just essentially returned to the bridge. So that's the fearless explorers plus three random rebels who were not infected, or at least they believe they were not infected, who had helped them, and they had helped them in there. And one of the rebels, I think it was two maybe, were still inside, clearly infected with mind snakes, but three of them had escaped thanks to the team's help. And so
what were their names?
Have to look it up because I named them on the fly. They did not have significance until I gave them names, and then let me find it.
I know one was named Margaret, and one was named Belle.
Yes, they were like Hardle, Bell, and Stundior. And so I said that, and everyone's like, "Oh, Margaret, Bell, and Studnior." And so, yeah. From then on, they were Studnior, and they're all men, but they were everyone kept calling them Margaret, Bell, and Studnior. Bell is a perfectly masculine name.
And this is an alien planet, so Margaret could also be a perfectly masculine name here.
And his name wasn't even really Margaret, but I don't remember what it was now. So, yeah.
Anyway, so yes, we went back to the bridge. And our plan was basically just sort of hole up, I think.
Things were sort of in a holding pattern. They just had to go for 70 hours. So I was like, all right, well, you have 70 hours now where you're just sitting and waiting, and 3 of you are on cyphetamines, so you never sleep, and the rest of you sleep, and you don't know what the people who are doing while you're sleeping, what they're doing. So I did a lot of like little room things where I would talk to people and ask them what they're doing, which actually amounted to some things. And I also just said, okay, well, you can just role play a few moments or vignettes of your paranoia through the next 70 hours. As you wonder who's infected and who's not.
So what we did, Pill is on cyphetamines, Chumley's on cyphetamines. Was Daniels?
No, Daniels and Pillay are sleeping.
Right.
And everyone else, so Yoon, Pill, and Chumley are all taking cyphetamine, so they don't have to sleep.
So Anne Pillay went to sleep. This was her mistake. So basically, we're like, well, we're pretty sure she's got a mind snake. If we let the mind snake know ahead of time that we're going to put them in the nightmare machine, they kill the host in a frantic attempt to escape. So Yoon, can you hypo spray Anne Pillay, make sure she doesn't wake up? So Yoon did. So we tied her up and we put her in the nightmare machine. And we threw the lever and we nightmared up Anne Pillay, which is unfortunate because Anne Pillay has had a lot of PTSD inducing experiences over the course of the
Yeah.
various episodes.
Everything always happens to her.
And this was happening to her now too. And as it turns out, she was in fact mind snaked because the nightmare machine put her in a coma. Which is what
happens because it essentially it doesn't kill the mind snake, it essentially puts the mind snake in the coma, and the mind snake is controlling you. So now you're in a coma.
Yeah. So we considered whether we should get Yoon to do the surgery to take the mind snake out. But as far as we're aware, there's like a 50% fatality rate on that.
Oh.
And we had previously seen Flint Daniels's dear NPC girlfriend that he picked up this adventure die on the operating table because of this, in a very horrific way. So we're like, nah, we'll just leave Anpele comatose for the rest of the adventure.
And it really made the most sense. I mean, the only real downside was like the real life thing that, Robert, Anpele's player, just had nothing to do. He just sort of, whenever anything was happening, he would just like sit back in his chair like this, like he was in a coma.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, yeah.
And also we had to cart her around whenever we were going places. I kept suggesting we just put her in a locker. But
I mean, I do enjoy that, that the party paranoia got to the point where they were putting party members into comas and carrying them around. And
Yeah.
Although that only happened, I guess, because they were right about her being infected. So
did we do Chumley as well? I don't think
there was some attempts to do Chumley. But no, it was it never happened. I don't remember. There was a few like things where someone's like, I did this, and people are like, no, you can't just do that. And so then there was like debate. So there was a lot of discussions of stuff like that. Like there was a moment where, well, I mean, I guess that part is, oh wait, before I describe this, let me just describe. They also decided to do it to the 3 NPCs. They like secretly hyposprayed them, knocked them out, and no, they didn't do it. They only did it to one of them, because they tested one of them and he put him in a coma. But then I think they left the other 2 conscious, because I know they were with us.
No, it didn't put him in a coma. All the NPCs were running around at the end.
Yes, I think that was actually a mistake, because I think one of them we said we put in a coma. So
I'm pretty sure they were all clean, actually.
Oh, right, of course. Yes, you're right. That's what happened. They were clean, and that's why it didn't put them in a coma. So they did test all the NPCs.
Yeah, we nightmared all the NPCs.
Yeah.
And they're all clean. So
nightmares.
Yeah, so it gives them a horrifying experience that like will haunt them, but now they know they don't have mind snakes.
If only we had the amnesia grenade, we could
yeah.
I had nightmares, but I forgot all about them.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that happened, I mean, I don't remember all the orders of these things, but one thing that had happened was Chumley became suspicious of Yoon at some point, or just wanted to test her, right? And so he was like, I earlier snuck a hypospray out of her bag, and I sneak up behind her and I hypospray her, and she's like, you can't just do that. And I was like, well, make a security check, and he succeeded. And she's like, but you can't just take a hypospray from my bag. And I was like, well, I suppose he can, but how's he going to know what it is? And so I had him make a medical check, which was a failure. And so
got hyposprayed with something random.
Yeah, so she got hypersprayed with something random, which I kind of like went to I picked a random drug status effect, which was she was there was one part of it, but the most important part is that she became irrationally angry, which is interesting because she was already rationally angry about this, which came into effect later. But actually, we should talk about some other things before we talk about Yoon and Chumley's feud. Yeah. What about you remember when I had to leave to deliver pie, and there was a bunch of role playing that happened during that? Only Brian can describe that. So
let's see what happened then. I mean, I don't
remember.
People
ask about Pill's backstory, and then some people were asking about Anpele's backstory.
Oh yes, that's right. We found out about Anpele's backstory. Yes. So yeah, some people were trying to pry into Pill.
Yeah, which is interesting because wasn't Amplay unconscious at the time? Or no, that was
No, this
after.
happened. This happened before then.
Before that, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, previously, whenever the players try to pry into Pill, it just ends up making Canada a more bizarre and complicated place. It doesn't really reveal much. So,
Yes.
so they instead were like trying to get a little bit more about Pill's psychology. And you know, they got him to talk about how there are two kinds of civilizations in the universe, the hiders and the destroyers.
Mm.
And they asked, you know, what kind of civilization are humans? And Pill hesitated for a moment and then said, there are three kinds of civilizations: hiders, destroyers, and fools.
Mm.
I usually don't mention the fools because they're transient. So anyway, and they asked him like, what's the best, you know, civilization type to be? And he was like, oh, totally be hiders. Hiders are the best. Because destroyers tend to be transient too. They destroy each other.
Mm.
But anyway, then something came up about family, like, you know, how family structures are arranged. And that's what set Amplay off about her backstory.
Mm.
Turns out she's a result of a experiment that was done some decades back to evaluate nature versus nurture, to see what effects nature versus nurture have on human development and personality and stuff. Yeah, I think that was because Pill was talking about how was agreeing with Chumley about how people should stick to the castes they are born into.
Mm.
You know, if you're born as a worker, you should be a worker. If you're born as a thinker, you should be a thinker. And so nature versus nurture came up, and that was what set Amplay off. So yes, some researchers did a shady experiment some decades back where they cloned a particularly renowned to be evil human from history and raised him in a loving environment. Those monsters. To see whether he turned out awful or not. And so, yes, they cloned Hitler.
Yes.
And they raised Hitler as a well-adjusted young man. And eventually he went off and had a normal life and got married and had a daughter, which is Amplay.
Okay. Amplay Hitler.
So yes, she's Hitler's daughter. And she's always, whenever we say that, she corrects. What was his name?
Adolf?
No. The clone had a different name. It was not named Adolf.
Oh,
That would have been a little bit too on the nose, you know.
I don't remember his name, but let's just say
Johnson or Jackson or something like that was
Adolf.
No, not Badolf. Just anyway, she'd always correct that, you know. It's like, no, not Hitler. That guy, different guy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, she's genetically Hitler's daughter.
Right.
So anyway, that was the the big reveal about Amplay.
Okay.
She's Hitler's daughter.
Who would have guessed?
Jackson's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise.
Now, was this testing done in Canada? So
I don't know.
She's from the US, so I think it would be probably from the US.
I mean, traditionally, when you're cloning Hitler, you do it in Brazil.
Okay.
None of the characters are from Canada except for Pill, who isn't really from Canada, and he is, and that's Richard Pill anyway. Ricardo Pill is from Mexico, so none of the characters are from Canada now.
Southern Canada.
Yes.
So anyway,
we also found out about her uncle. I think.
Oh yes, yes, Buford Amplay. Which
does Amplay have a first name?
Yeah, Sabine
Amplay. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, Buford Amplay is actually in the Space Corps or whatever. He's fairly well positioned. He's like a general or an admiral or something like that. but he came up through the ranks. He was a security guy, on a ship, much like our, the sitting duck classes thing. That was his foot in the door. And back then, Buford Ampelay, that was a bit of a mouthful. He had a nickname, Buford Ampelay, Beef Manpile.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Things are connecting.
Yep.
Yeah, Robert revealed that like the reason for naming his character Anne Play was entirely so that she was entirely based on Beef Manpile.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's great.
So it's possible that Beef Manpile will be making appearances in future episodes as an admiral.
Yeah, neat. Admiral Manpile.
Yep. Just call me Beef.
Beef.
So
I can't remember anything else that happened before.
yeah, then we
before-
stuck Anne Play in a nightmare machine and put her comatose for the rest of the adventure.
Right.
Because enough of that.
Yeah. So after 70 hours of sitting around with Amplay comatose and everyone paranoid, we reached the destination, or we were almost at the destination, which is the Mother Baobab.
But then Shannon made a terrible mistake. Not Dr. Yoon, Shannon.
Yeah, I had commented that throughout this time you'd had to repel occasional attacks by like infected rebels, but it didn't really amount to anything. But it had been very quiet for the last couple hours. And yes, then Shannon foolishly said, if I was them, I would just scuttle the ship. And I was like, yeah. And everyone's like, why did you say that? In fact, it was so obvious. I was like, I really can't not scuttle the ship now because it wouldn't make any other sense otherwise. Like I didn't even really want to scuttle the ship, but it was just like, I can't reconcile reality if they don't try to scuttle the ship.
Yeah.
So then everyone was like, well, crap, we got to go search the ship. To see if they're
Find the guys that are trying to scuttle the ship now. They overheard us. No.
And so they started searching the ship, and eventually they found a group of rebels setting explosives near the back of the ship, and we had a firefight. They easily eliminated the rebels, but unfortunately, somehow someone in the team accidentally shot the explosives, and they blew up anyway, and blew out a big hole in the back of the ship. And so now the ship is sinking. It's not like going to sink in 2 seconds, but it's like slowly sinking into the water.
Yeah.
It's Titanicing.
Yes,
Right.
It's slowly Titanicing. And they're still about 3 hours away from the Mother Baobab. And everyone, and I'm like, okay, well, people are like, well, how long do we have? And I'm like, well, that's an engineering check. And they all look over at Anpele, who's unconscious, and they're like, well, I can try to do an engineering check. No, total failure. So they're like, I don't know. This ship's gonna sink somewhere between like 5 minutes and 7 days from now, and we don't know. I mean, clearly it wasn't sinking in 5 minutes, but whether it would make it to the Mother Baobab was another question.
So we started hunting around. Sorry, what?
Also they had to fix the ship, so that also required some engineering.
Yep. But we're like, we're just a couple hours away. We're pretty close now. Is there anything on the ship that we could use as an impromptu raft or something like that? And so we did some hunting around, and we found out that this was actually a research ship, and it had some of those deployable submersibles, like the Alvin type.
Yeah.
Things. They actually had a whole bunch of them in a sort of docking bay area. Each of them had 3 seats. And had robot grapple arms and also a harpoon gun for some reason.
It's for harpooning a creature and pulling it into you. But,
Yeah.
So,
Anyway.
so Pill and Daniels went down and found those because we ended up splitting the party because
Chumley and Yoon started after Chumley injected Yoon with rage juice. Yoon and Chumley started actually fighting. Yoon was like punching Chumley, and Chumley
So-
was like, "You're a woman, I can't hit you," and so Yoon was like, "Good, punch, punch."
Yeah, and so, I mean, we can come back to how that all ended later, but that was basically what they were doing.
Yeah,
And then-
Daniels and Flint were like, well, more like Pill was like, "Let's go," and Daniels was like, "Okay."
So they were left there, and Daniels and Flint, or Daniels and Pill were down in the that's like in the lower, there was sort of like a moon pool
Mhm.
thing where you could launch from the bottom of the boat, because it was like, an open thing, and so
Right.
they were down at the bottom of the boat, luckily near the front, because the back of the boat is what's sinking into the ocean. The front is still somewhat buoyant.
Maybe if we could have revved up the engines some more, we could have started skimming, boom, 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 like that along the water. Anyway.
Yeah. And so they did some like practicing around in the submersibles. One thing, there was a whole bunch of these. And
yeah,
as they got there was rebels. There used to be like 10 of them, and rebels were blowing up the 7th one. And so there was only 3 left. They killed the rebels, but there was only 3 submersibles left now.
fortunately,
they-
we only needed one because we could fit Pill and Daniels and the Nightmare Machine in one. The Nightmare Machine's big enough that it takes a seat.
Yeah, there's 3 seats, one for the driver, one for the like the robot hands, and
Yeah.
one for the harpoon.
So we were like tinkering around with them to make sure they were still usable. And there was a bit of a confusion there. John thought we were taking them out for a spin, or taking one of them out for a spin and then coming back. And so when he said, when we got back, the other 2 are now gone. And we were like, we're testing the systems. We're not taking it out for a spin. I mean,
Because I was gonna have the other, if they left them unguarded, the rebels were gonna continue to destroy them, but I guess
Yeah.
that didn't happen, so that's fine.
yeah, I honestly did not intend to actually take the thing out of the ship. That would be foolish.
So they managed to limp, the ship managed to limp to within range of the mother Baobab, and at this point it's very badly sinking. Like the back half is like under the water, but the front half is still above the water. And they gathered everyone in the moon pool launch bay, with the intention of the idea, I think, was, so Pill and Daniels are going to go out with the Nightmare Machine, and then in one of the submersibles they put Chumley and 2 of the
NPCs,
the rebels that were with them. And the other one Yoon decided she wasn't any good at, or Yoon, the idea was Yoon was gonna go in the other one with another one of the NPCs just to be backup or whatever, right? That was the plan. So they get there, they're within range, and so they launch the
Pill and Daniels are now in a submarine, and we launch the submarine. There's only like one pool that we can launch through, so we have to go one at a time. And then the plan was that the next submarine would come right behind us and be following us. But as soon as we launched, Yoon pulls out a laser rifle and starts shooting at our submarine.
And so it does some superficial damage to it. I mean, I don't know. This adventure was full of mini games, and this was no different. I pulled out some.
As soon as that mini game came out, I was like, "Oh my god, not another mini game!" It's like 9 o'clock. We're almost done.
And poor, yeah. Well, Brian seemed genuinely stressed that Yoon was betraying them, and
I was stressed because we were so close to being done this adventure, and now a complication had been thrown at us.
Okay.
So I brought out, I had this, they're in this like very glass domed submersible thing. And I had this like idea, I don't know if you played that level of Earthworm Jim where you're in that's like the worst level ever, where you're in that thing that's always cracking. And I had this idea of like this cracking glass. And so I don't know why, but this made me think of like a dexterity type game. So I brought out Click Clack Lumberjack, and I put it on the table. And I was like, okay, every time someone does damage to you, you got to knock off the equivalent amount in bark. And if you do, it's superficial damage. But if you knock off a core, it's going down my like damage track of actual damage to the thing. And so Yoon does some damage, and they have to knock up a bark. It's just superficial damage. And then Chumley says over the radio, oh, what, you're under attack. Here, let me pull you back. And he fires the harpoon at them and, does,
Superficial damage again. We were able to not.
yeah, is that one just superficial, but it still does damage. And everyone's like, Chumley, what the heck? The harpoon is not gonna pull people back. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, what, really? And, so he launches right behind them. And, at that moment, the rest of the NPCs and some other rebels that were like waiting outside come rushing in and fill the other submersible. Yoon stays behind because she's not any good at this. And so they launch. And so now, and then, so they keep going. And immediately after that, Chumley fires the harpoon at again, saying, oh, maybe it'll work this time or something.
Yeah.
Which is becoming less,
I don't know. It was really a close thing. Is Chumley that big of an idiot? Or is Chumley infected by a mind snake and is actively, it still was kind of close. But at this point, it was like, basically, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whether Chumley's actively on their side or not, he's effectively on their side.
Yeah. So, well, and it became pretty clear as things were going on. Chumley was trying to actively destroy the thing. In fact, that was the moment that the first like chip actually got in, and a little like spray of water started coming through as they knocked the first floor off Click Clack Lumberjack. And I think it's probably a good time to flash back to the scene where Chumley and Yoon were fighting. So after he injected her with random medication that he thought was knockout medication, but it was actually caused rage, she starts attacking him. And while they're having like a huge fight, they're totally distracted. I was like, okay, a mind snake starts like, coming up your leg. And he makes his check, sees it right away. It's coming up his leg, but there's a bunch around. So he decides to tase himself. And at this moment, I took Shannon to the little room who plays Yoon, and I was like, okay, look, you and Chumley are alone because the NPCs weren't right nearby. They were kind of with them, but they weren't nearby.
Yeah.
You're alone. Chumley is now stunned for like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's no one here but you and him.
Right.
And there's mind snakes like, just over there. What do you want to do? And she's like, I'm gonna grab a mind snake and shove it up his nose, because she's been waiting for that opportunity since the beginning. She had been infected since the first night on the planet, so she was always when the mind snakes employed.
Yep. Ampele apparently Ampele was also infected pretty early on. We later found out, but
yeah, before this incident in the room, it wasn't too as early as Yoon. It felt like a long time because it was before we broke for COVID, but it was later. But Yoon had been infected since the very beginning, and that was actually a kind of a ploy. Most of the things were kind of random, but that was a ploy on my part because I was like, Yoon has to be infected because she's the one who can do the medical checks to tell if the testers work, which they never worked. And that kind of thing. So anyway, so she, like, right there at the very end, she infected Chumley while the other two were dealing with the submersible. So now, and she of course reinfected Ampele, although it didn't matter because she was in a coma, and she infected all the NPCs as well because they could then overpower them, right? So all the NPCs, everyone except for Pill and Daniels are actually infected now, though until just moments before it was only Yoon. So
I thought that some of the NPCs weren't. They got killed.
That's what I said, but that's because I didn't realize that she had said they were. She didn't tell me that she had infected them. So I said they got killed, but once I realized that they were infected, I was like, oh well, they wouldn't have killed them then.
Okay,
that's what I said because I thought they had to.
So Stud Muffin is still alive then?
Yeah, Studnior is still alive. I said they killed him, but that was because I didn't realize they had infected him.
Awesome, Studnior is still alive.
And you told Yoon's player from like the very beginning that they were infected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Shannon said it was horrible because she wanted to tell someone, but she had no one that she could tell for like 3 years.
Yeah.
But yeah,
not even Tim.
It was actually interesting when you were running from the engine room, and like the snakes would get on you, and she kept saying things like, "Oh yeah, I got them off, and then she would just like wink at me and show that she didn't succeed in the checks, and she just it didn't matter. So Yeah, she was just totally making it up, but because I told them, you know, you can intentionally fail a check if you can get away with it where no one notices.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so back to the submersible. They've got their submersible going for the mother baobab, and they've got the two other ones firing their harpoons at them.
Yeah.
The harpoon swivels, so they're returning fire. Daniels is returning fire. Pill is driving.
Yeah.
And it's actually getting pretty close. Like they're playing this click clack lumberjack, and I'm like, you gotta, they're getting damage every turn. And
I've never played Click Clack Lumberjack before. The very first time I tapped the thing, it just shot that thing right off the top. And
Yeah,
John actually gave me a do-over because that was literally the first time I'd ever touched the thing.
It's right here.
Yeah, it's actually the version that we were playing was the one you gave me from like the board games
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah, so so I think it was right around the time they got into range of the mother baobab, and it's just like a giant underwater baobab. It has like a big open mouth, almost like a sea anemone. And as soon as they get in range, it sort of starts turning and starts sucking them into to its mouth. So now they're being sucked in.
I
Which
was
is not too
fine
bad
with
since they
that
want to get
because
close.
yeah, it's like it's helping us. Excellent.
And at that moment was when I believe it was Chumley hit the thing with a really nasty hit, and they could not successfully avoid the problem, and a huge cracks broke in the surface and starts spraying water violently inside, giving everyone disadvantage, which is bad because they're about to be making like the checks to decide what happens here. But I told them that if Pill stopped driving, so just let the thing suck them in, he could basically tank it. So he's taking double disadvantage, but Daniels is fine, right? And so Daniels gets open the nightmare machine, which, just to mention, the nightmare machine is actually a medical therapy machine. Its purpose is designed to you connect up someone who's having like issues to someone who has a calm mind. It can help them calm their anxiety or depression or whatever. That's what it's for. But instead they're hooking it up to Daniels and his cognitohazard images, causing it to give you nightmares.
We're throwing it in reverse.
Yeah.
Right.
So they turn this thing on and start trying to make a connection with the mother baobab's consciousness. And meanwhile, Chumley and the rebels are just firing at them every round, hitting. And Brian and Tim are playing click clack lumberjack, and so Daniels is making these diplomacy checks, and he connects, and then he connects to the consciousness, and I'm like, he made a really great check, and I'm like, so you've managed to connect. Now you're gonna have to make one more check in order to transmit the cognitohazards, but before that, you've made such a great check. You can say one phrase to the mother baobab, and it'll understand you and take it seriously. But at that point, he's like, we can't negotiate anymore. Oh, because they had tried to negotiate earlier. Yeah. It didn't really work out. They got someone who was infected to kind of like start seeing humans the aliens as people, and then the other ones just killed him. But anyway, at that point, he's like, all right, this is your last chance. And that was his phrase. The mother baobab just responded with anger. It didn't care. Yeah. And so
I would have used it to deliver a classic one-liner.
That would have been great. I thought he might try to use it to like, say, we're people too or something, but no, it was past time for that. So that at this moment, I forget if it was Chumley or one of the NPCs delivered a massive hit to the sub, and it cracked open and just started pouring water in. And I was like, okay, at this point, you need to get this sub to the surface within 30 seconds or it's going down. Right. And so then, but Daniels does his diplomacy. He connects up to the brain. He transmits the message, and the mother baobab suddenly just goes still, utterly still in the water, stops sucking them in. And all of the other subs go still too, because all the people in the subs fall into a coma. Right. And suddenly, that's it. The mother baobab has stopped.
We've won.
You've won.
Pill and Daniels are the only people left in the world.
Yes, Pill and Daniels are the only people not in comas. There might have been a handful on the ship still.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess there's cells around the planet, but
Yeah.
yes. So they have about 30 seconds to get to the surface, which they do. I mean, at this point, we're
Just blow the ballast and
the
emergency ascent.
the
I mean,
tension is
actually,
over.
Daniels is the only person left.
Yeah.
Right?
And Pill is an aquatic creature, so it's not like this was a particular threat to him. He
No.
was concerned though because he needed Daniels alive to operate the thing. I actually had earlier considered, maybe I should get Daniels to do the nightmare machine whammy on me. Convince him that I'm potentially a risk, so that way I would have the cognito hazard in my head.
Yeah.
And then I'd be able to solo this if it came to it.
Right.
But yeah, I ended up not doing that and didn't need to, fortunately. So
if I remember correctly, the cognito hazard came from that like crystallized.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
that was the thing that was called the nightmare machine. We started calling that medical device the nightmare machine now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And I don't remember what the cognito hazard did.
it was just a horrifying series of images that like were nightmares from some kind of entity. It kind of gave you like, I don't know, it kind of gave me like Far Realm vibes, or like, just
Cthulhu-y.
yeah. And so basically the consciousness of the baobabs or mind snakes seems to be a little more primitive, and so it just is not able, it just puts it into a coma.
Yeah.
And so by doing it to the mother baobab, they basically put the entire baobab network and mind snake network into a coma.
Yeah. Didn't the like cognito hazard also cause people to do like betrayal-y kind of things, like crystallized things? Or
I don't think so.
Oh,
It
you're
just-
thinking about the Epiphany,
Oh yes.
a completely different cognito hazard.
Okay.
Yes, this is just the one from the nightmare machine that was like,
Yeah.
it was on the planet of the hamburger feet.
Yeah.
But
I do not remember at all.
The Epiphany is different because it's a seductive cognito hazard.
Right. Yeah.
It gives you benefits.
Right.
If you explore the concepts of the Epiphany further, you'll get more benefits and more benefits. And then eventually you think turning into a crystal is an awesome idea.
Yeah.
The most benefit.
And then you think that transmitting yourself to the giant black hole monster is an even better idea. And so you do that. And yeah. Anyway.
So this is a different cognito hazard.
Different cognito hazard.
so at this point, it's sort of it's wrap up. So they they use their or no, Pill goes down and like rescues the subs because he can swim. And Daniel said something like, yeah, I think you better do this, Pill, because I think you can hold your breath. You're just more athletic than me. I can only hold my breath for about 10 minutes. So I assume you can hold your breath longer than that.
Yeah. Initially he asked me how long I could hold my breath.
Yeah.
And I said, as long as an average human plus a little bit more, because I'm exceptional average human.
like Canada.
Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I can only hold my breath for 10 minutes. So you can probably, yeah.
So they gathered up the other subs and brought them back to the ship. The ship is like, the bottom half is completely underwater. It looks like it's going to go down in the next hour for sure.
You realize that in future adventures, I'm going to assume that all my compatriots can hold their breath for 10 minutes now.
Indeed.
Oh, dear.
My plans will be built around that assumption.
Yeah.
So they gather up. All of they drag as many unconscious rebels as they can to safety. There are a handful of uninfected rebels still on the ship who help them, and they gather as many unconscious rebels as they can, and they gather all like the life vests and stuff like that and cobble them together into a giant life raft. They also transmit the procedure for removing the snakes. They do that immediately. And they say, if you could help us out, that would be great because we're going down. And they don't hear anything back. But as they're, the ship's about to go down, all that's like sticking out is like the bridge and the communications array. They get a notice back saying, are you there? and you know, we're gonna send some not airships, gunships to come pick you up. We'll be there in a few hours. And
Mm.
so, you know, the ship goes down, they have all these like rebels and stuff, most of them unconscious, strapped into all these life vests in this giant raft in the middle of the ocean. But eventually a couple gunships arrive, pull them out of the ocean, and each of them has brought along a couple surgeons, and they immediately get to work doing the surgical procedure on the party. I think on Yoon first.
And it turns out that it's a super easy procedure, barely an inconvenience.
It's not a 50-50.
Yoon was saying it was 50-50 because she didn't want people to try that. And then when Flint Daniels' girlfriend was under the knife, Yoon made sure that it was a hazardous procedure that brutally, viciously, awfully mangled her brain and killed her.
Right.
So yeah, Yoon killed Flint Daniels' girlfriend.
Ooh, that rivalry is going to continue, huh?
Yeah. I mean, people understand that the mind snakes make you do things, but at the same time, it's all very, you know, you have all, you know, Yoon woke up and she has all her memories of all the things that she did while she was mind snake, but including murdering the Tanya, I think her name was, but
yeah. So
yep. And but yeah, they everyone got surgery and decomed. And they returned to the mainland. And actually they gave a lot of good suggestions on how to manage since it was fairly easy to do the procedure, how to manage things. Because my main concern is like these people are in coma. So you've got about 3 days till they die of thirst, basically.
Right.
Like everyone is in a coma on the whole planet. But we talked about like having like, you know, having people just go out and gather people together. So the surgeons can just go boop, 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 boop.
Right.
And also have groups of people going around and just pouring water into comatose people's mouths to keep them alive longer.
Does
right?
that actually work?
You'd need a tube. You need to stick a tube down the throat.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they'll drown.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, they organized, you know, groups of people. And so we figured that actually probably most of the people in the cities would live. Probably people in rural areas are not going to fare so well, but in the end, I decided that about 80% of the population can survive because you know, they focus entirely on this and do it. So about 90% of the city dwellers lived, and about 10% of the rural people lived. And
you didn't have like a mind snake cult political party that decided actually.
Well, that might be something for the future. Right now, they were in recovery mode. They got personal.
I'm just 100% convinced of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it certainly it did improve their economy and get rid of wars and stuff. So but they got personal thanks from the premier Adolef, I think his name was, and you know, everyone considered them heroes and whatever. And then they took some time to have their post-cyphetamine crash. They went back to their ship and found it had been fully repaired, just like they promised. But a giant rock that was clearly a baobab seed was embedded in the white zone. Yeah. And in fact, it was so large you couldn't take it out without disassembling the ship.
Fortunately, I disassembled the seed.
Yes, it's actually really resistant to destruction, but Pill's advanced sciencing found a way to, you know, he bombasted it with Gargion particles and a trigogolon cutter and managed to cut it up and then take it out.
Those things are designed to survive the planet exploding. So I had to do a very highly focused more than planet explosion at it.
Right.
So they saved 80% of the planet.
I also did some science at them, and John was like, I'm done with this adventure, so if you want to make up any science about them, go ahead. So I established that these things actually they are life forms, but they're not fully naturally evolved life forms. So they were enhanced in some way. They were engineered, cybernetically enhanced in some way. So that might come up later.
Yeah, so, so they saved 80% of the population, stopped the planet from blowing up, and none of them are mind snaked anymore, and I guess they're on their way home. So that's
Hooray. And then we headed home, which was, we haven't played Space Alert in 2.5 years. There was one other thing we got as a little bonus to make it a little less difficult. When they were rebuilding the ship, the Gleanians were rebuilding the ship for us. I requested a modification. I requested one of those glass drinking birds that dips its beak into the glass of water, set up to wiggle the mouse with its dipping action, so that we wouldn't have to do the wiggle the mouse operation on the ship's bridge every once in a while to keep the ship from shutting down. I knew that would get us in trouble, but ultimately we needed that. So we hadn't played the game in 2.5 years, so we were a bit rusty. And it's not like we were very good at this before anyway. So we got in the ship and off we went. Started the drinking bird going.
It was an interesting game of Space Alert in that one of the things I got right away was the is the energy cloud. Yeah, the energy cloud. It's like my least favorite thing to get because it drains all your shields, and it came in. I think it was the Maelstrom one, the one that's like the serious threat. It's like the worst card in the game in the white deck, in my opinion. And it comes in, and it has like massive shields unless you hit it with the pulse cannon, and the pulse cannon only has range 2, and on its X it drains all the shields. So we figured out that there was one turn. We had to kill it in one exact turn, or it was going to drain all our shields. And due to some actually fantastic space alerting by everyone, everything fell into place. It got hit with the pulse cannon. It got hit with the front cannon, and it got hit by a rocket on that same turn. Except, due to a small mistake by other people earlier, this one little fighter was still barely alive, and the rockets always hit the closest target, and so it hit the fighter.
That stealth fighter.
Oh yes, it was a stealth fighter. And no one noticed that it's until it crosses X, you can't shoot it because it's stealthed. And so people shot a whole bunch at it. And
we were like, okay, we've taken care of that thing.
Yeah.
And then we went on to other things. We went to deal with this Maelstrom.
Which
but
is
the
just,
problem
it's classic.
We fired off this awesome
Yeah.
volley of weapons that if that stealth fighter had been visible, we would have destroyed it. But it wasn't. So it was all wasted. And then when we were shooting at the Maelstrom, the space fighter was closer, or the stealth fighter was closer, so the rockets hit it instead of the Maelstrom.
And just like it just blew that stealth fighter into a mist.
It annihilated that stealth fighter, but there was right behind it, there was an asteroid. An asteroid's a big bag of hit points. And so we unleashed a huge amount of weapons fire on this asteroid. And it all got tanked by this wee little stealth fighter that we thought we destroyed earlier. Well, it didn't get tanked. It blew it away, but it absorbed all of the shots.
It doesn't go through. It just all goes in, and then at the end of the round, things die, right? Yeah. So it nothing got through to that asteroid, and the asteroid was a serious threat. It has 9 hit points, and however many hit points it still has when it gets to you, that's how much damage it does, and you can only take 6 damage. So it can kill you straight up, right?
Yeah. We had to whittle it down, and we did whittle it down a little bit.
And we didn't have any shields because the next round we destroyed the Maelstrom because we had fired extra at it, but unfortunately it crossed its X, which means it drained all the shields, and draining all the shields sucks.
So we did hit the asteroid a bit because there was some stray fire that was being shot, I think, by accident. That managed to take some points off it, but unfortunately it was left with 7 hit points, and we have the limit of 6. However, was it Chumley? Yeah. Chumley has a special ability that lets her player or her character, whatever, repair 1 point of damage to a ship. And by the book, by the rules, the moment that asteroid hit us and did 7 points of damage, that was the end of the game. We lost. However, it just so happens, this wasn't planned, Chumley used that repair ability in that section of the ship at that exact moment. And so John had mercy upon us. So yes, the ship, the side of the ship got, it was like peeling away, and it exploded. It was starting to fall away, and the repair bots grabbed onto it and pulled it back into place and managed to weld this wretched hulk of devastated ship half back onto the side of the ship, and we were still alive.
Yeah. And and so it was at max damage, but not destroyed. I mean, as Brian said, by the book, they lost, but whatever. This is not by the book. This is we're telling a story here. And I also just incidentally, the other zone, so there's the white zone's in the middle and the red zone and the blue zone on the sides. The other zone, the blue zone, I think, doesn't matter. There was only one threat was in that zone, and it was a minor threat, and it came in late, and everyone was focused on everything else. So we shot at that a little bit, but it basically it had its way with the blue zone. And the blue zone actually ended up at max damage as well, because just that threat didn't get dealt with. And so we have this ship. The white zone was actually completely perfectly intact, which is good for them, because my evil plan was like, if it took any significant amount of damage, the drinking bird would like fall over, and then and then I would have my revenge on them. But actually, and that threat in the blue zone was actually going to take us past max damage in just like one round. But Brian's character Pill has the hyper navigator ability, which lets he used to jump to hyperspace 1 turn early. So you basically get out of playing 1 turn of the game, which is actually pretty amazing. And so that saved our butts, because we
the way we sort of imagined it is it fired its weapons that would have destroyed us, and the bolt of energy was passing through space, and we hyper jumped right out of the way of the bolt. So yeah, we actually survived. We landed the ship. We didn't crash.
With both sides of it in complete flames, because they were at max damage. And as this flaming ship comes in and successfully lands in what's it? Cheyenne Crater. And and the crews come out and extinguish the flames. And the captain comes out, Captain Smythe, and says, "Oh, congratulations on such a great landing. Looks like you guys are in great shape. Why don't we go straight to the debriefing?" So they basically, had 15 minutes and went straight to the debriefing.
So yeah, we saved a planet. They've become our bosom buddy allies. They're almost as technologically advanced as we are, so they're really valuable allies. The first really valuable allies we've had in the whole game. We succeeded in bringing the ship back intact. We brought back a whole bunch of biological data about this threat, the baobab trees. Super awesome. But we had that drinking bird set up that was preventing us from seeing the advertisements on the screensaver that Corporation Incorporated has their sponsors show to us. So we got in big trouble. They chewed us out something fierce.
Science Officer Pill's log. Encryption key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A race of fools encountered another race of fools. It was going to be interesting to see. But then destroyers showed up, and somehow the combination of 2 fools defeated them. An interesting thing to note. Still, fools. I don't think they're going to survive much longer. I don't know how much more I can get out of this mission. But I've already used my return buoy, so I'm stuck continuing with them. We'll see how much farther I can get. Attached are the various scans I've done of these mined snakes. Yet another insidious danger. Those are the worst. I came out here expecting just cataclysmic destruction, but it's all insidious. Yes. We'll have to improve our scanners.
Flint Daniels reporting. Another successful mission for the Space Rangers. I'll admit, when we lost Nadia, I almost lost faith in Yoon's abilities. But it turns out she was murdered by treacherous mind snakes, which we have manfully eliminated from the surface of the planet, and the planet of Earth has one more ally in our quest. I love it when a plan comes together.
Engineering officer's log. Oh, it's been a while since I've done one of these. But yeah, that was, okay. I've had a lot of bad missions, and some of them were the worst. This one was also the worst, because mind snakes. These things always happen to me. I get the mind snakes, I get the psychic torture, and yeah, I'm just getting fed up with it. My brain is soup now, and I think I need to get away for a little bit and deal with that. Yeah.
Medical officer's log. Number... Oh, I've lost the count of these. Man, it seems like we've been on this planet forever. I'm just so happy to be home. But I do need to make a memo to myself. Though we successfully made it back, and we landed, and we technically succeeded in our mission, I need to remember to get a lock for my med case. And make sure it's only I can open it. Because that Chumley, or Chumblewaffle, yes, I know it's Chumley, he's not to be trusted. Maybe he's some kind of drug addict. Like, he seems to be ready to grab any medication from my med case. Well, see if I heal him in the future.
Security officers log the Most Honorable Evelyn Horatio Hugh Marquess of Chumley. Well, when we landed on that planet, Glynn, it seemed so peaceful and well organized, but pretty soon we realized we were in pretty bad loaf. I mean, little metal snake things going right up into the sneezers, and making your brains all quaking like wool birds, if you know what I'm saying. Well, I was doing all right until that doxy prime article Yoon, don't tell her I said that, she kept tasing me. It was awful. She wouldn't just kept tasing and tasing. She is completely niffy-naffy, I tell you. I will not sleep near that woman. If she'd been a man, I would have tapped her claret. I tell you, I would have. But once the snake was in the dub of the hick, I couldn't tell my right from my left. I went and torpedoed my own people. Me! It was a bit of a rough shindy, I can tell you, but, well, you know what they say. All's well that ends well, and in the rough of it, I discovered these pills, this amazing medicine that helps to keep your peepers open, no matter how long you've been waking, and it just gives you so much energy. I'm definitely going to get me some of those for next time we're in a tight spot. It's so useful, and now I know where Yoon keeps them too, so that'll be extra handy. Anyway, that's all for now. I gotta go and get checked to make sure there's no more snaky things up my sneezer. Till next time.
Engineering officer's log addendum. I remember the other thing that broke my mind. It was the stupid epiphany, and I'm actually disappointed that I remembered that, because that was probably the worst of them all.